Sir is an ecological activist, an ardent nature writer, and an educator based in Chennai. He is working to include earth centric and child centric education in schools, promoting ecological conservation and ground up processes of change and politics. He writes on ecology, education, and activism. He is currently traveling and documenting stories along the Indian coastline. And he has been awarded with the prestigious M. Krishnan Nature Writing Award by the Madras Naturalist Society in 2017 for his essay on bale plants and lime caterpillars. What inspired you on the path to being an ecological activist, especially at such a young age? Because we have read that you have started very early in your life, so we really wanted to know what inspired you.
Yeah. So firstly, I want to thank you for having me here. I love the energy and the initiative. A bunch of young people have come together and are, doing this, as part of a magazine or, whatever other activities you're doing. It's fulfilling to appear in this initiative. So in my own journey, I studied in a Krishnamurti school. My education was very formative in shaping my direction, and at a very early age getting clarity on what my values are and what I'm going to stand for in my life. If you had asked me when I was 10 or 11 years old, I would have told you the same answer I might have told you today. And that is because of philosophical grounding of my school. Krishnamurti, there are different people who reimagined education. They looked at mainstream schooling, they looked at conventional educational institutions, and they found that it is simply made to produce, as it were, like in a factory, a certain kind of human being for the larger economic system, for the profit of the larger, the corporate setup. And this comes from our colonial past, other education institutions we are going through. And then some people who lived through the worst period of human history, through the world wars, includes people like Montessori, Steiner, Krishnamurti, a lot of other educators. They said, this is not the kind of education we want. We want to reimagine this such that we can have a more humane, compassionate, deeply earth conscious human society. And so I grew up in such a school, and there was space for questioning. So one of the things the schools valued was children can grow as they are. So let's say you are extremely talented and have an innate passion for dancing. There was space for that expression. The school would support it to the extent it could. I was deeply interested about exploring myself through nature and nature in myself, and looking at the ecological realm as a continuum between the inner and the outer. And journey grew, and I'm thankful for my school for that. And of course, later on, my mother encouraged that. Other kinds of readings encouraged that. My teachers were part of that. So that really was the space in which this kind of came together.
So the recent development projects have put many fragile ecosystems under a lot of stress. And we would like to know more about one such ongoing project, the Adani Megaport project versus the Pulicat Lagoon. And how difficult or easy was it to urge people to join the movement? And we would like to know more about this particular project.
World over, if there has been any kind of environmental protection or social justice, humanitarian movements, it's been because of one thing, one single thing. And it's not because of the laws, it's not because of the judges who pass judgments, or it's not because of the politics and the policies. It's been purely because of an informed, proactive, persistent public
do you believe that the focus of government has been on the tourists visiting Andaman rather than the indigenous communities or the indigenous islanders? Would you like to share any interesting anecdotes from when you visited the Andamans and the local fishermen communities there? So if you have any
Yeah.
special,
So I was for a period. I've been for a short while on Havelock Island, um, and you know that we learn Indian history in our textbooks, and we learn from Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, the civilizations, which I think at the most about 4,000, 4,500 years old. The Andaman tribes have been there for the past 60,000 years. That's really far, far greater. I mean, back in time than Indian civilization itself, or what we come to consider Indian civilization. But that's something which is not spoken about and is not in common knowledge. They are um, very, very old communities who've been living there for a period of time sustainably and at peace in such a fragile ecosystem. And we end up calling such people primitive, but then um, well, we've been on this in our landscapes for a while, and then we've made it unlivable within few centuries. But then looking at it through that lens, there's much we can learn from practices, the value systems, the life philosophies of such people, if we can. So the latest threat to the Andaman is Niti Aayog's mega city plan for Little Andaman Island, where the Onge tribals live, and they've been there for tens of thousands of years, and that's their last reserve. And the plan is to relocate them to some other place. And this raises a lot of questions. Does somebody who has lived on this land for tens of thousands of years have greater autonomy about that place, or is it this very recent kind of a political power give you the right and the wherewithal to make these decisions? It calls for deep humanitarian questions, even what is belonging, um, and such other things. So it's very, very kind of deeply disturbing to see our approach to the Andaman Islands. Now being quoted as the vision document of Niti Aayog says we want to make it the next Singapore. And there are plans to lay cables from India right under the ocean till the Andamans, and so on. There's a very special thing about them. Again, our definition of them is primitive tribals. But then when the Indian Ocean tsunami hit us in 2004, all the local tribals started moving up the mountain the previous day. And the great linguist G.N. Devi actually has researched this. One of the greatest linguistic studies of India. He walked from village to village documenting language and how land speaks through the local language. So the Kar Nicobaris, the Jarawa, the Onge, these people had words for wave textures, which allowed them to perceive different kinds of waveforms. They have dozens of ways of speaking about what the surface of water looks like. They have words for the call of the white-bellied sea eagle, and to understand the way it soars and the way it moves informs where they should go out for fishing. Their language is ocean-centric, as it were. And so they were able to sense even the slightest seismic disturbance on the waves and move upland. And that implies a kind of profound local knowledge of that place, which our our greatest technology and meteorological devices could not do.
We would like to know that whether you want to share anything or want to share a message for the younger generation that are coming up regarding environmental matter, or how cautious should we be regarding environment, the youth, the generation right now?
Okay. Well, to the younger generation, I want to say something which I've been writing about recently, and it's about citizen science. Uh, and it stems from what a geophysicist in the University of California, he works with um, something called complex system modeling, which means his research is about different political cultures, different prevalent kind of practices in society. If that was time scaled deep into the future, what would it end up doing to the earth? And he finds that the only thing which can reverse the ecological trends we are facing, reverse the other kinds of crisis we are facing today, is ground up direct action, either via activism, either via self-governance systems, um, politics which stems from the people on the ground, not from the top imposed upon. He says those are the things which will reverse the crisis we are facing today. His presentation at the American Geophysical Union is one which is fantastic. So I think youth must be proactive. Must be, you don't accept what is told to you. You ask why. Question every answer. Uh, Deeply believe that in human society, in the world, there are hundreds and hundreds of opportunities for thought, for career, for what the great poet Antonio Machado says: traveler, there are no paths. Paths are made by walking. But then but parties with vested interests will come and tell you and say, hey, this is the path. You stray out of it. You got to become this. You got to earn this. You got to get this name, or otherwise you're done for. You refuse to believe that. You develop the courage to create your own path, which is absolutely different from anything anybody else might be doing. And at the most, be proactive and questioning and thinking, and informed.